Okay, hello and welcome to Mastering Life Shorts. This week we're going to be talking about communications. Now, there's been many things written about communications over the years, and you could spend whole weeks on improving communication. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you one model that you can use to potentially help you improve your communications. So first of all, let's think about what communications are. So question, can babies communicate? And I would contend, no, they can't. They scream and shout, but they're not telling you what they need. So it takes some time before they can tell you that they're hungry or thirsty or tired or sleepy or they need their nappy changed. And so we spend the rest of our lives learning to communicate better. Some people seem to think that once you can read and write and speak, that our communication journey has finished, but it really isn't. So what is communication? Communication is basically that I have something, some information I want to share, and some way of sending it to you. Seems simple enough. So for example, if I wanted to share a beautiful picture of a screaming baby with you, how can I do that? Now, some people don't know that I was in a previous life a physics teacher, and one of my favorite parts of physics for teaching was actually communications theory. So I'm going to go into science for a moment to show you how digital communications work, and then we're going to use that as a model for how human communications can work and potentially spot the places that human communications can fall down. So this is the model for digital communications. So I'll talk you through it in piece. First of all, I have some information. I have a picture of a screaming baby that I want to share with you. I then need to encode that in a series of ones and zeros, which is the language that computers understand. I then have a thing called a modulator. So what happens when you're sending radio waves or TV waves, there is a carrier wave, which is electromagnetic wave, or in the case of copper wire, the wave, or fiber optics, and the wave is electrical pulses or light pulses, that you add the signal wave to the carrier wave, you get a modulated result, and that result is the thing that goes through the air or through the wires. That is then transmitted in the case of radio and TV and mic and mobile phones. That would be through the air, and something will pick it up, some aerial, some receiver in your broadband box. It will then be demodulated, where the carrier wave and the signal wave are split apart, giving you the ones and zeros back. And then you can decode that information into your picture again. Now, the great thing about digital communications is that there are checks that happen all the way through to make sure that the message that was sent is the one that you're expecting. This is one of the reasons that whenever you go to an electrical superstore and they try to sell you gold-plated wires, you should say, no, thank you very much, because it doesn't matter what the coating of the wires are. If you're talking about digital, they're already talking to make sure that the signal is right. So a simple example would be, in some digital communication systems, the receiver will send a message back going, I heard this, is that correct? Or they will have what's known as a checksum, where you have a series of ones and zeros, and the last few ones and zeros will say, if you got everything, then the total will be this. And if it's not, then you send a message back going, I didn't quite get that, can you send it back again? So digital signals already have those checks built into them. The question is, in human communications, do we have the same checks? Do we have the same system? Surely it's not as complicated as modulation and demodulation and encoding and all the rest of it. Well, if you think about it, actually it is. I have some information in my head. I'm feeling angry. I have something in there and I need to tell someone. So the first thing is I have that feeling inside me and I need to turn it into language. And in this case, I've just said, I'm feeling angry. So then I say, I'm feeling angry. Now, the other person then has to hear me say it. They then have to take that language and turn it into something inside themselves, information about my state that they then have to comprehend. So far, so simple. Where can it go wrong? Well, the first and the most obvious place that it can go wrong is in the speaking or the sending. So what is said, if it's said in person-to-person conversation, then obviously body language can get in the way. I was told the other day that when I'm listening to someone, I have resting frown. So I'm going like this. And apparently it can be misinterpreted as I'm disagreeing with the person. And that means that when a person is speaking to me, I'm sending a message back to them that says, you're saying something that I disagree with, and they might change what they're saying. They might try to change their language, for example, to try and make my face reflect what they're saying, when actually all I'm doing is thinking. Wrong time and place. So, for example, if a manager was to give their subordinates some negative feedback in a public area, but it was supposed to be, constructive criticism, if it was in public, then the subordinate might receive that completely wrong. They might think, you're just trying to put me down, you're just trying to make me look bad. Therefore, they're not getting the actual message, which is just do this and you'll get better. And I really believe in you. It could be in the wrong format. When I was working in companies, was the absolute king of writing grumpy emails. When actually I should have gone to the person or picked up the phone and spoken to that person. And that's where the big problem with email is that you don't have the subtleties of tone and intonation and body language that come with speaking to someone, or either in person or even on the phone. You can hear them. You can hear if someone is saying something and they're not smiling. For example, you can see if someone is upset about something and that it's coming out in a different way. So the wrong format. Other things on their mind. So the other day, my boy came up to me and said to me, can I put the washing machine on? And I just went, yeah, okay. Now, I had other things on my mind at the time. So I wasn't really listening at the time to what he was saying. Turns out that I was then on a call very soon after that, and I got very annoyed that the washing machine was making noise around the corner while I was having a call with a client. So he had spoken to me when I was doing something else at that point, but I wasn't really listening. And I, in my turn, didn't say to him, sorry, I'm not taking notice. I'm doing this. Can I come back to you in a minute? I just went, yeah, whatever. People come to communications with their own agenda, always. And I talked about this last week. An obvious example would be confirmation bias, where someone is listening out, but only for the bits they want to hear, and they're missing the bits in between. And that can really change the way that someone is speaking. And this happens all the time when you say to someone, I think you're great, but there's this, and then there's this, but I actually think you've done a really good job. They'll hear the but bit more than the great bit, always. And the other thing that really gets in the way is if the listener is actually just sitting there thinking, I want to put this point across, I've got this thing to say, and they're not listening to what's coming in. I experienced this many times when I was training around the world, where people would come to my training with a particular axe to grind or a particular point to make. And I would spend the morning explaining what was going on. And then someone would put their hand up at lunchtime or at the end of the day, even worse, and say, why haven't you done this? And I go, I've literally just spent the full morning explaining either that we haven't done it and you don't need it, or we have done it and what's the problem? So people didn't listen because they were so busy. in communications where people are interviewing or coaching or counseling someone, one of the problems that people have is they're sitting there thinking about the question they're going to ask. So when I'm coaching, for example, I'm not sitting there thinking about what the question. I'm really trying to listen to the person, and there can be much bigger gaps in conversations, in coaching conversations with my clients, because I'm really trying to listen to them. Now, all of that comes into active listening, and there are many resources on active listening out there on the web, but understanding active listening is really important. Now, that's a really key and obvious area of where communications can break down. But there's another one, and it's here. It's in the language. Now, a really obvious example of this, well, sorry, before I go there, there's a series of things that can get in the way of turning information into language that we speak. So culture, for example. So if you were to speak to an American or a German person and they were to give you negative feedback, it'd probably be quite upfront. They would tell you what they thought, and it would be there in front of you, and you know how to deal with it. On the other hand, quite a lot of East Asian, Japanese in particular, are well known for the fact that they won't give you any negative feedback, but by not praising, or they'll say something and you're supposed to read between the lines. So the thing that actually comes out of the mouth isn't the information that was expected by potentially a Westerner. Obviously, there's language barriers. An example of that would be if I was to think if an American was to think I'm angry, they might say I'm mad. A British person might hear mad as insane, and that obviously means something very different. Customs can come in there. So I once went to a school in Thailand, and I was asked, "Have you eaten?" That I thought I had to answer politely and say, no, I haven't eaten. Turns out that have you eaten is just the way in certain cultures of saying, hi, how are you? And you're not supposed to say no, because then they had to go scrambling around to try and give me food. Beliefs. A lot of time arguments happen when people believe that someone else knows something that they don't. So you miss out a part of the story because you think, oh, well, they don't need that. I don't need to go over it. Experiences. The word queer to me when I was growing up was always a swear word. These days it's been reclaimed by a part of the LGBT plus community, especially about trans people, who don't really feel that they fit into lesbian or gay or straight or bisexual. It's something else. So they call themselves queer, and it's an absolutely brilliant way of saying I'm not the sexuality you expect me to be. Have a chat with me and we'll explain what that means to me. Education. Now, obviously, there's the level of education, and if people have worked in a particular industry, then they'll have certain words. Or there's just those little things that if someone said to me, what's the meaning of life? And I said 42, unless you've read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you have no idea what I'm talking about. And then, of course, demographics, age, gender, race, sexuality. All of these things will be added in to the language that we use. So the key about this is this. I know you think you understand what I thought I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. That was misattributed to Alan Greenspan, but it's a great quote that basically means, think about what I actually said. Is it what I said? Now, throughout this whole model, there are these places that you can that communications can go wrong. So just some really top tips. First of all, communicate at the right time. Make sure you're saying the right thing at the right time to the right people in the right way. Choose the right method of communication. Pick up the phone instead of moaning via email. Consider the background of both sides of the communication. Does the person have the same base understanding of this topic as the person you're talking to, and do you need to do something about making sure that you're both on the same place? Check assumptions. Is this what you already know? Make sure you're there. Key one that's new to a lot of people is backtrack, don't paraphrase. So, for example, if I was to say to you, how was your weekend? And you'd said to me, oh, I had a quiet weekend. Then I reply, oh, yeah, I love a quiet weekend when I'm just sitting and watching TV. You might come back to me and say, no, that's not my idea of a quiet weekend. My idea of a quiet weekend is getting away from the family and going up a mountain and sitting on a mountain in a tent. So use the words that the person is speaking is using. Oh, you have a quiet weekend. That's lovely. What does that mean to you? Check understanding, that last one. So make sure you really understand what the person is saying, and then your communication will get much better. As always, I put together a worksheet for you to work through. I've got the model on there, and then just a few bullet point questions to really make you think about how you could improve your communications. Get it from my brand new website, englishleathermaster.com/mastering-life-shorts, with the password communicate with a capital C. Next week, we'll be expanding on a little part of this perspective, how different people can look at things from a different perspective. So I'm really looking forward to speaking to you about that. Thank you very much for being here today, and I look forward to next time. Goodbye.